You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Rira Yu.
And we're here to discuss our February book club pick, The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. It is a 600-page epic. I think we have some discussion of whether it counts as fantasy.
Yeah.
I think it does. I think Rira has other thoughts. Actually, it doesn't really fit into any one box.
Yes, I will agree with that.
But it's a book that I read about a year ago now, and Rira just finished. And since she had my copy of the book, she has the fresher mind on this story, while I'll be trying my best.
I mean, you remember like the main parts of the book, right?
But as you mentioned on our Goodreads forum, there are a lot of characters.
Yeah, there are. And we'll get into the ones that matter, I guess, because there's a lot who just die along the way.
So we're going to get into it because it's a long book and there's a lot to talk about. This is your standard spoiler warning that we're going to be talking all about the book, all 600 plus pages of it. So if you haven't read it yet, go read it now. Or if you don't care, or if you just want to hear us talk about a book you haven't read yet, cool. So let's get into it. The archipelago of Dara was once divided into 7 kingdoms, with shifting alliances and constant battles, a tempest of diverse dialects and cultures. When a relentless king united the 7 lands into one empire, some thought it would bring peace and end the turmoil. Instead, it brought stagnation and suffering, the anger of the gods, and finally a rebellion. Kunigaro is a wily bandit who is more concerned about being well-liked than with the affairs of the empire, until he meets his match, Jia. This free-spirited daughter of a well-regarded family sees greatness within Kuni. Driven by Jia's love and touched by the grace of the common people, Kuni sets out on an unlikely path to heroism and perhaps a daring wager against the gods. Mata Sindhu, the last scion of a family of renowned generals, is favored by the gods. Standing 7.5 feet tall, broad-shouldered, and double-pupiled, Mata looks like a hero out of ancient legends. Determined to reclaim his stolen heritage, Mata catches wind of a revolution and begins a journey to become the greatest warrior of his age. Kuni and Mata become fast friends, and they wage separate wars against vast conscripted armies and silk-draped airships in order to wrest Dara from cruelty.
As expected, since this book is very long, and the summary that you gave barely tips, like it's like the tip of the book.
That's like the first 100 pages.
That's like
maybe.
The first 100 pages. There's a lot that happens. But I would like to start the conversation from what genre is this book?
Right.
Because you say it's fantasy. And I have I have my doubts about that.
I mean, there are fantastical elements to it.
Yes.
There are airships and birds with special gas and mysticism and gods.
Yes.
And a dude with 2 pupils. But you're telling me that that's a real thing.
It's not so much about a real thing. I would say that the book skews more towards science fiction than fantasy. I mean, yes, there are gods, but I feel like a lot of the quote-unquote magical elements are in the machinery. Ken Liu said that his book is silk punk. I think he's the one who coined that genre first. And I think that is the most accurate way to describe the genre of this book. It's kind of like the Eastern version of steampunk. And steampunk is pretty much like an alternative Victorian era science fiction novel.
A lot of top hats and goggles.
Well, lots of top hats and goggles, but also like during the Victorian era, it was a lot of new inventions. It was the Industrial Revolution. So you have like steam engines, and you have blimps. You have you start to see like engines, and like people who writes steampunk is taking inspiration from the inventions that came out of the Victorian era. And I feel like with silkpunk, you see like kite fighters, you see submarines that's knowing the shape of whales in a way. And like the airships, they're not really like steam based. They're kind of functioning in a, like, I think Ken Liu described like the engine to be like a gallbladder of a fish that's like filled with gas, which is totally not how blimps are run.
I mean, he devotes a whole chapter on the discovery of these bags of gas within the stomachs of this falcon that allows it to glide long distances without much effort. And then they realize that this bird has been, like, I guess, inhaling this gas that naturally, I guess, occurs within the islands of this archipelago, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I get what you're saying, that all of the like fantastical parts of it is explained and actually used in practical ways.
Yeah.
A lot for warfare, right? I mean, the whole discovery of this gas to create airships allows the emperor of the first half of the story to take over and unify the kingdoms, right?
Yeah.
Because he invents airships and airship warfare.
Yeah, and like with the gods are actual characters. They kind of function as like the Greek chorus. Yeah, that is technically fantasy, but I do argue saying like, well, there are books where it's, you know, pretty much science fiction, but you have like the society's religion and how like their social structure is based off of religion. So it really doesn't fit into any specific genre, and that's great because genre is just an easy offhand way to recommend books, in my opinion.
But I think the way that the book is structured reminded me of like great epics, right? Like,
oh yeah, it's definitely told in the story. Like, it reminded me of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and those are both epic poems, and they are both told in omniscient POVs, which we will discuss in a bit. But yeah, like I guess like it is like I did think that it was silk punk. But I also thought it was more of a military fiction novel, because I felt like so much of the book was like on battle strategies and like conquering certain cities. And I'm like, okay, like,
isn't that like half of like Lord of the Rings too?
Yeah. I mean, in a way, because it like switches POVs between like Frodo and Sam, and that's not the same because they're not like in battles or anything like that. Yeah, but it really did feel like the Iliad to me, because like Iliad is like all about battles, and then you have like, you kind of have whiplash with like all of the characters because you're trying to get like all this information on the people who are being affected, people who are in power and making changes to the war, having influence in the war.
Yeah. Like, Ken goes deep into like the details of a lot of the nitty gritty of what it takes to mount a resistance, what it takes to even govern. Like, he goes a lot into the government systems of both the empire and also the new kingdoms and empire that occurs in the second half of the book. It's really quite impressive.
Yeah, I think we should talk more about the world building.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't, like, a lot of the culture is based on like Chinese culture, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's not Chinese at the same time. Like, you have a mix of like Pacifica culture, because like there is a race of people in the Grace of Kings universe who are kind of described as Polynesians.
Darker skin,
tattoos.
Yeah.
There's like their resources are like coconuts, seafood. They have like these incredible boats that are like reminiscent of Polynesian
Yeah.
boats. It seems like there are like a wide array of facial features.
It's I mean, in the lore of the story, the people of Dara came from a mainland from somewhere, right? So they're descended from people who crossed I think they call it the Sea of Storms,
Yes,
to settle in this archipelago. And so, I guess you can say they're an island nation of a lot of different cultures, right?
yeah, like every single kingdom, because there's 7 of them. Every single kingdom has like its own like culture, also like what they are best known for. Like the kingdom of Ha'an, they're known for like their intellectuals. They're known for like their scholars.
Their Confucius stand-in.
Yeah, Kon Fiji. I think that was a character.
Yeah.
You have Amu, which is like more about like, I don't know, like fashion, fashion, just like beautiful things. They like focus so much on like beauty and elegance and sophistication. And then you have, and then I think Kingdom of Gan is like super militaristic. I'm not like, don't quote me on that, but like
Right.
but there was a state that was like really into military. And then you have Kokru, which is like the biggest state. And it seems like all of our most powerful players in this war all come from Kokru.
Yeah, that was the seat of power that Mata Sindhu's family left, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And at the beginning of the story, they're like one generation removed from this big unification war where the emperor of Zana, I think, is the empire's name, right?
Yes.
Because they come from this island nation, right, where they found the gas, but like, were they like a fisherman village or?
They were they were an island that was kind of far from the main archipelago, and people considered Zana to be kind of like a backwater kingdom. They made fun of Zana people's accents. Their industry was primarily fish, but against all odds, the Zana kingdom was able to conquer the other kingdoms
through the use of technology, superior technology, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess I will jump into this now. A lot of Ken's plot points in his book are based on the Chu-Han contention, which happened around 200 BC. And the Chu-Han contention, it was the interregnum of it was like the period between the Qin and Han dynasties. At the time, the Qin kingdom, they annexed the other 6 states. After the Warring States period, they were the victor, and they unified China. So they were the first unified Chinese empire, and that's Zana in this book. And
they only lasted about a generation too, right?
Yeah, they did not last very long. And after the Qin dynasty fell, you have the creation of the Han dynasty, and the really like interesting thing is like each character in Ken's book has like a historical counterpart, and a lot of the battles that happen during the Chu-Han contention is actually like in Grace of Kings. And the thing is, like, I didn't really know my history. I heard that it was based on the Chu-Han contention, so I was like, okay, after I finish this book, I'm gonna look stuff up. And I was really surprised at how much he took inspiration from.
Yeah, I mean, I knew he was inspired by the Han Dynasty, the stories of like heroes from the Han Dynasty. He says so himself in the dedication of the book, but I wasn't really aware of like how much of the story followed the same beats. And I imagine a lot of people outside of China or even in China probably don't even realize it.
I do wonder about like the people who did have a good knowledge on the Chu-Han contention and also like the Han Dynasty. Like, I wonder how they felt reading this book, because like so much of it is based on like actual historical events and historical characters, not historical characters, like real historical figures. So I wonder if they like could guess what was going to happen and just like how fresh the story felt to them. I'm guessing that it must have still felt fresh, because you do have these like fantastical elements.
I mean, you have kite battles.
You have kite battles. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the historical figures that the characters are based off of, like Kunigaru is based on Liu Bang, and he was the emperor of the Han Dynasty.
The first emperor of Han,
emperor of Han Dynasty. I think Gaozu is I don't know how to pronounce Chinese stuff. Sorry, I'm not Chinese. And then Mata Zundu, his historical counterpart was Shang Yu, and he was also like described to be very tall and strong. He was able to like lift this really heavy ass sword. He did have double pupil eyes.
Right.
I think he had one double pupil, but yeah, that exists. That's not just like fantastical.
I mean, it could just be exaggeration for like the legend.
I
right?
guess. But the thing is like that is based off of like historical archives.
Oh, okay.
Like whether or not that's true. I mean, like someone wrote it down. And there's also like,
did he have like that that monster horse or whatever?
I don't know, but he did become hegemon king after the rebellion against the Qin dynasty, and he was pissed off at Liu Bang because in the book, King Sufi says anybody who conquers the city of Pan, which is the capital city of the Zana Empire, they will become the king of Gefeka. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm guessing it's Gefeka.
Yeah.
But so Mata, he goes and does this like really brutal battle at Wolf's Paw, which is based on the Battle of Julu in real history. And while Mata is fighting this kind of like epic battle, Kunigaru kind of sneaks into the city of Pan, and through wits, he's able to take control of the city.
Yeah.
And that actually happened in history. And
Really?
Zhang Yu, Mata's historical counterpart, was pissed.
Well, yeah, because Mata was all about honor and battle, and he looked down on anything that had anything to do with like wits and charisma.
Yeah. So a lot of the plot points in this book is based on historical beats. Yeah, like I was really surprised at how much was the same. Like you have that banquet after Pan is given over to Mata Zundu. Mata Zundu's advisors try to assassinate Kunigaru, and Kunigaru escapes by pretending to go to the latrine, and that actually happened in real life. And Mata Zundu also, he died by committing suicide at like the final battle in the river. That actually happened. And the what was his name? Hunokrima.
He was the first rebellion leader, right?
Yeah, the first rebellion leader. Like, the patrol officer who's like, if I and like we're already past our deadline to get the laborers to their right city,
Right.
and they're like, well, I don't want to die, so let's rebel against the Zana Empire. And that like Hunokrima is based on a real life figure.
Did he really like fake a prophecy?
Yes. And he also like became king, and he was really bad at it. He was really vain, and he just he died.
There were a lot of really bad kings in this book.
There are a lot of bad kings, a lot of false kings. Like when Mata died in the final battle, was it the final battle? Yeah, it was the final battle, and like one of his soldiers said, "We can retreat and go back to your island to Noah and like get more support there." And then Mata says, "I cannot go back to Tunoa because all the people who came with me to the main archipelago, they're all dead. So I can't like go back in shame. And then he kills himself. That was also a real thing. So there's a lot, and I don't know if like, can you consider that as like original writing or not?
I mean, to be fair, how many like quote unquote Western fantasies are based on like the War of the Roses or I don't know, Napoleonic Wars or whatever?
The Bible.
Yeah. How many Iliads are there?
I mean, it's one like
Well, how many like
adaptations
Iliad
of it?
inspired
A lot.
stories are there?
A lot. There are a lot of plays that take place in the Iliad timeline, but I think it's fine to take inspiration from history. I think it's fine taking plot points from like real historical events, and I do consider it original writing because even if you take beat for beat on history, like by like when you sit down to write it in prose, it's gonna change into something entirely. Like different. Like Kunigaru, like it's based off of the Emperor of Han, but we can never know like how the Emperor of Han talked or how he behaved with his like close friends. You can like get references here and there, but you have to fill that in with dialogue, have to fill that in with within the context of the story. So I do consider it to be original writing.
And I think if it sends someone down a rabbit hole of reading about history of another country, like it did for you, I think it did his job.
I mean, I'm just one of those people who like, if I read like a historical fiction,
You love lore, right?
I will go hunt it down.
Yeah.
But we did talk about like George R.R. Martin and Tolkien earlier. And I do want to like say that while it does seem similar in terms of like taking history as inspiration and also just like the sheer size of the world, like A Song of Ice and Fire and also Lord of the Rings, they kind of have like this perspective of, oh, the past was great. And we need to hang on to the past. Like, remember, like, the golden age when, like, elves were still, elves weren't leaving the shores and, like, men weren't, like, fighting and squabbling.
And it's definitely not racially coded to mean anything. Definitely.
But I feel like in The Grace of Kings, it's not saying, let's hang on to the past. In fact, it's saying that the Zana Empire kind of sucked and they had cruel punishments, they had high taxes, and there is a reason to rebel.
But then it's also saying what we had before wasn't much better.
Yeah.
Right, with kings and constant warfare. I think something that really struck me was this search that Kunigawa has for like the best way to govern, right? Like he's characterized as a happy-go-lucky type of guy, right? Like doesn't really take anything that seriously.
Yeah.
And he acknowledged all the good things that the Zana Empire did for the people. He just didn't like how they went about doing it.
Yeah. And Mata is like the complete opposite.
Mata is remember the good old days when my family ruled everything?
Yeah. Like I literally wrote this down in my notes. Like Mata is, my family was awesome. Everything was great in the old days. Why don't we go back and reinstate all the nobles? Reinstate all the rich people back into their rightful places.
Because he's the one that believes in like the concept that nobles should lead because they're like
divine power. Not divine power. Divine power is the emperor, but
he subscribed to the belief that some people are better than others by who their parents were or how they were born or their bloodlines.
Yeah,
right.
He is very big on like bloodlines.
Yeah.
I guess since we were talking about Kunigaru and Matazindu, did you prefer one over the other?
I mean, obviously, Kuni was the more relatable person, right? Because he, as someone who lives in a kind of democratic society, like you're definitely set up to sympathize with like Kuni's perspective on things, especially when Mata's perspective is, yeah, nobles are better than commoners. Mata seemed to actively look down on people who were good at their jobs but were not born of a certain rank, right? He he was actually really condescending to Kuni, right?
Yeah, he was. He was just like, oh, like...
You're pretty good for a commoner.
Yeah, you're pretty
Like-
good for a commoner. And also just how merciful he was. Like, he's just like, oh, like, you have to, like, teach these commoners how... how like the rules work, otherwise they'll like mess up the social order. And Kunigawa's like, that's what I want to do, mess up the social order.
And I mean, he was very much, and his followers kind of saw him the same way, where he was the hero. He was your prototypical like epic fantasy hero. Like, he was a good warrior, he could fight good, he can inspire people by fighting good. All he really could do good was fight, right?
Yeah, which is correct historically as well.
And Kunigaru, I kind of liked the fact that he was portrayed as like not fit at all. Like, he was kind of a...
Oh yeah, he had like a beer belly, and like people made fun of him for like his figure.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me though, like I said in the Goodreads forum when I was like 200 pages in, I was like, I don't know who to root for. Like, and that's kind of how I felt throughout the entire book. I was like, I don't really, like, there's really not a person that I want to root for. I mean, maybe like more Kunigaru because like, yeah, fuck rich people. Fuck rich people. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know, like, he seems kind of like not cut out to be cutthroat enough to run an empire. And
I mean, that's just his character.
I mean, that is just his character.
Like, he wants to be well liked. Like, it's important to him to be a good leader and to take care of the people around him, which, you know, in some ways is great when you're leading a rebellion, right? And I kind of saw, like, I mentioned this to you offline, but I was thinking about on the way in, and some of it reminds me of Hamilton, really. Like, the first half is all about the rebellion and fighting the battle, and the second half is all about, like, okay, now what? And the conflicting ideologies. And, well, in Grace of Kings, there's still a lot of battles in the second half.
Yeah.
But you start to see, like, even from the beginning, Mata and Kuni were friends, but they weren't really friends, right? Because Mata was always using him. Like, Kuni, I felt like Kuni was always more earnest in what he was trying to do. Mm-hmm. The whole reason he took over the city of Pan was because the opportunity presented itself, and he took it. Like, Kuni was always characterized as an opportunist.
Yeah.
Right? A hustler, opportunist.
And it's just like, oh, let me do the most interesting thing.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I just really hated it every single time. He was like, this, like, time to do interesting things. And I'm like, God, how many times this is going to appear in this book?
He's the wild card. He's the wild card.
No, just like the phrase, like, the most interesting thing. I'm just like, I get it. I mean, but at the same time, I don't want to read it like 20 times in this book.
Eventually, even the gods started saying it.
Yeah. So this book is written in an omniscient point of view. So the reader kind of like knows everybody's thoughts, and Ken Liu head hops among all of the characters to relay information. What did you think about that narrative style? Because it's not really used in a lot of books.
I guess what I can say is I didn't think much of it. To me, it was just how it was written. I did recognize that we were jumping around a lot, but I kind of just thought this was just what like epic stories do.
I mean, like Celeste Ng's books are also omniscient point of view, so she head hops a lot as well.
Yeah.
Whereas, but like the difference for me was that I didn't really have any emotional attachment to any of the characters. I don't know if it's because you head hopped a lot, but in Celeste Ng's book as well, like there's a lot of head hopping. I think it was just because there didn't seem to be a lot of character development. Like, each character seemed to be kind of like an embodiment of a philosophy. And I was like, okay, cool. I know that like this person stands for this, and this person stands for like, you know, like rich people and traditionalism and all that stuff. But I didn't really get to like really have a deep understanding of each character, except for maybe like Kunigaru and Matazundu, who are like the main characters in this book.
I mean, you spend the most time with them for sure.
Yeah, but even then, I'm like, like what did I write here? It's like, how did Kunigaru and Mata become brothers? They don't seem to get along. and you just kind of like jump in without like any kind of like growth between them.
Well, I mean, I thought about that too, and it always seemed like a one-sided thing. Again, like it always felt like Mata Sindu was putting up with Kuni because he was useful to him.
Yeah.
Right. And like Kuni allowed him, like their first big victory together was basically
taking over Zudi again.
Yeah. And doing so by like having Mata fight and like do like duel people one-on-one with a kite.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think they were brothers in arms because they had the common goal. But in terms of how they saw each other, I mean, it felt like Kuni saw Mata as someone cool that he wanted to like hang out with.
And then Mata was like more condescending, like being like, oh, you're like a good, it's like, you know, it's a good time being around you, but you're still like my inferior.
Yeah. And I think that's what led to the jealousy of like all these victories that Kuni kept racking up because of his guile and wit. Whereas Mata was like pretty much like fighting these hard battles and not getting as much out of it.
Yeah. I mean, he considered Kuni's strategy to be tricks and dishonorable. And I get that. I understand that. But I guess like my issue with a lot of the omniscient point of view head hopping was that there was a lot of like relaying information. And I wish that I saw it more in a scene rather than just like having a character just kind of think it or like the author just telling us what the character is thinking instead of like seeing it in action. And that's just like, I think that's just me, like, who has a screenwriting degree being like, please, like, have the characters, like, show and not tell. And, you know, I hate that phrase, show and not tell. but like, I did wish that there was more, like you could interpret more from, more about the character through actions rather than through inner dialogue.
I wonder if it's because I haven't actually read the book in about a year, but to me, like, I still remember the details about how all the systems worked in this world.
Yeah.
The government systems and what makes them unfair, right? Because he has all these anecdotes about how families are affected by the Corvi system of the Izana Empire and also like Kuni developing his new philosophy.
Yeah.
And philosophy in general, like there's a lot of description of the Konfuji school of was the philosophy moralism, right?
Yeah.
Moralism is Confucius, and then there's like other schools of thoughts. And I did enjoy how much of the culture is like I think it goes back to what you're saying. I've seen these scenes in like Chinese period dramas before. Like these public squares where scholars debate each other on like philosophy and politics. And to see it like described on page, I thought was pretty refreshing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one really big difference between like Western epics and Eastern epics is the importance of like scholarship. Like I feel like it's such a big deal in East Asian history, being like, oh, like this person rose up the ranks because of their education. Yeah. Like how often do you see that in Western epics? It's like, yeah, it's not really built into like
I mean, Western epics, Mata would have won.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like there's a problem with that. Like imagine if Achilles became a king, like in the Iliad. It's like no one's gonna stay alive for that long. like what do you do with someone like Mata who only knows how to fight? Like it's not really good for government.
And who only recognizes strength, right? And that's kind of what led to his downfall. When he does take over as hegemon, is the whole like only rewarding people he likes and really just messing up the entire like system.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm trying to think like, oh yeah, going back to like the POVs, I think one really good thing about it was how these minor characters, like even though they were going to die really soon, you got like a really good glimpse of their thought process. I mean, like he stayed on for a long time, but one of my favorite characters is Kindo Marana, who is the...
Was that the accountant?
Yeah, that was the accountant.
The accountant being like the best general ever.
Yeah. Like when Kopu, I think about Kopu Krapu, I like don't remember his name.
Yeah, if I remember correctly.
The advisor of Emperor Anishi, who like pretty much...
Yeah, he assigned the accountant to be the general because he wanted him to fail, right? Or he thought he would fail at it. But then he turned out to be super good at it.
I don't know if he like expected him to fail. I think he was just so tired of him asking like stupid questions, like really like minutial details about taxing. He's just like, oh my God, I wish this guy would like stop bothering me about like taxes and like policies. What if I just made him a general? He could just die in the front lines, or he'll it's just like whatever. Like he needs a job to do. Like might as well make him general.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he was so good at his job, even though he was like from the Zana Empire. And it was just like I think it's really funny because Ken Liu, like he used to be in tax law. Like I think he was I think he was like a tax lawyer before.
Oh.
I mean, he was also a programmer.
I mean, these details make sense then, like this attention to detail.
Yeah, I mean, like he was a programmer. He also like studied law. So like a lot of like the really small details about like how taxes are made and how like small businesses are run in like each city, like that comes from his background. And I thought that was really, really funny.
Yeah. I mean, you can really picture how this whole economy works together and why like splitting everything up to 18 random kingdoms makes no sense from like a governance standpoint.
Yeah. Like another criticism that I had about the book was things seem to go a little bit too easy for Kunigaru. like I feel like, I don't know if it's because he had like such a competent team, but like I was like, okay, yeah, like his setbacks don't even seem like setbacks. Like he just keeps winning with his wit, and he's able to get away with so much because he is quote unquote merciful.
I think it comes down to the two different philosophies between him and Mata, right? Like he believes in like having the best person for the job do the job, right? And like trying to like figure out what those roles are. And Mata is you will do what I tell you to do, right? He is a very much top down, like I am the master, I am the leader.
I mean, like the only really big setback that I can remember from the book for Kunigaru was when they're stuck in the mountains and like the airship wouldn't go up. So like his wife Gia like had to stay behind along with like some of his officers. And I was like, that was the setback. Like that was it. I feel like he's winning at everything.
Well, there's also like he got demoted to like the smallest island.
But even that wasn't a setback because that was like his foundation for like
his own rebellion.
Yeah, for his own rebellion. And whereas like with Mata, I was like, you cannot be this stupid. Like, how are you making such bad decisions? And like, I mean, I understand, but at the same time, like, I understand because he is like that is his mindset. He is a warrior.
That's how he was raised, right? By his uncle.
That's how he was raised. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like his uncle would have, been a better governor. Like he would have probably advised him better. Probably,
but then they both fell in love with the same woman.
Yeah, more about that later. I have a lot to say about Kikomi. Yeah, I was just like, why are you making such bad decisions? You have advisors telling you that these are bad decisions.
But he was raised to believe that might is right. Like he's the mightiest of them all.
Like I think the big shift was when his uncle died. Because like his uncle was just like, you're going to be in the rear guard and like you're not going to be the marshal of the army that's going to invade Wolf's Paw. And then like after his uncle dies, Mata's just like, nope, I'm going to take over the military. So once he gets to Wolf's Paw, he burns down all of the ships and makes his army like pretty much like just like plow right through into the enemy's forces, being like, hey, you have 3 days of rations. If you want to survive, you need to kill the enemy soldiers in order to take their rations and in order for you to survive, which is also something that happened in history. And I don't think it's a good strategy, because it's like I'm always someone who's like, have a backup plan, always have an exit plan.
Well, I mean, it goes to show that, or went to show that he was willing to treat his people the same way that the Zana Empire treated the common people, right? Like, you're all resources for me. You will do whatever I say. Because that was one of the things that Kunigaru fought against, was the system of like conscription, right?
Yeah. Another favorite character of mine was Luanjia.
Luanjia, yeah.
Luanjia. I think he was like the first character other than Kunigaru and Mata where I was like, yes, someone with a unique skill. Someone who seems to be more fleshed out. So Luanjia is from the kingdom of Ha'an, which is known for its scholars.
Right.
So he comes from a family where I think he's like the 3rd generation of just like kind of the equivalent of like an imperial scholar.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was imperial scholars, but he came from a family of really smart people.
Yeah.
Really smart nobles.
And Ken Liu does a good job of like framing the scholars of Ha'an as like super up their own butts.
Well, it was like really cool because even commoners who run like small businesses like restaurants and like and just like regular merchants, they have a pretty good education. They're able to do mathematics. They're able to debate on politics,
right.
And all of that is lost after Zana takes over Ha'an, and like after the Zana Empire unified.
Yeah, I mean, like, they took over.
Yeah, after they annexed Ha'an, like it's already like a second generation of like Ha'an children, and they don't know like what they're they don't know that like there was like this great intellectual society because they're not given the same opportunities, and Luanjia is kind of like that's part of his mission. It's to like restore Ha'an's like former greatness. Yeah. But of course, like his priority is to like kill the emperor of Zana.
Right. And he was
he's in the first chapter.
He's in the first chapter. Yeah, he was the kite assassin.
Yeah,
right?
Which is already like, wow, he is badass. Like he is great.
Now, is he based on a historical figure as well?
I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure he is.
Because his character reminds me of the character of Zhuge Liang from the Three Kingdoms mythology, who is this scholar / engineer / strategist.
Okay, it's probably it's probably based off of that person. But yeah, like his background story is that Zana invades and his family is pretty much like murdered, and he's like the only survivor. And his father tells him to like kind of seek vengeance, like avenge their deaths. And how he escapes is that like one of their servants dress up as a Zana soldier, and Luanjia is dressed as a girl. So that when Luanjia is like screaming and like trying to get back to his family, like it looks like a Zana soldier is taking away like some commoner girl. And the tragic thing is like that loyal servant gets killed by bandits, I think, because they think that a Zana soldier is holding like a poor girl captive.
Right.
But I really like Luanjia because he travels like around the world of
like even outside of like the civilized
world,
right?
Yeah. And like he is approached by the god of wisdom in Dara, and he has this magical book, one of the very few magical things in this book, by the way. He has this magical book where
say the god is pretty magical.
I mean it's pretty magical.
He takes the form of a turtle, right? Or something.
That's like his Pawi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is his like Patronus, right?
symbol, I guess. But yeah, like Luanzia has this book that records like all of the discoveries, all of the teachings that he comes up with in his journey, and it's pretty cool because that book pretty much like is like it's a huge asset in the rebellion against the Zana Empire.
Yeah,
because it like teaches it teaches them like how to build weapons and.
I mean, I remember you talking about how you felt like a lot of the characters don't really have like big arcs, but I feel like Luanzia has a pretty big
Luanzia
arc.
has like a great arc, and also like I said this earlier, I couldn't really get emotionally attached to any of the characters because it just seemed like they were kind of like emblems of philosophies, and there was just kind of like this distance from like, I don't know, like it just seemed like the characters were advancing the plot rather than like having the reader grow with the characters. Like for George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire, I think one thing that book does really well is to like have the reader be really emotionally invested in specific characters, like their favorites. And the reason why like you get so shocked while you're reading the book is because you're cheering for certain characters to like to like make it, but you know that they won't. You know that like the world that they live in is so unpredictable, and that's why random people die.
That's true. Like as precarious as the situations Kunigara finds himself in, he's never really in any mortal danger, right? He's always like, you always figure he can like, I guess Kenlu doesn't really set the stakes for the main characters.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe because they're meant to be these like epic heroes that like are pushing the plot along.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like even though I wasn't emotionally invested in the characters, like I don't see that as like a terrible thing because I feel like this book it's written in a way where it kind of reads like a history book, like a history text mixed in with like military strategies and taxes and like in the Iliad and Odyssey, like I don't feel emotionally attached to any of the characters, but does that make the story like less interesting? No. So I'm okay with it.
I do agree that like besides the main like characters of Kuni, Mata, Luan, and probably Jin. Like there wasn't a lot of dimension to the other characters. Like they were just like pieces on the board for like the main players to like move, right?
Yeah, like if you asked me to state the differences between like all of the advisors that kind of show up, like the advisors and like the regents in this book, I'm like, I don't know. They all want power and like they kind of seemed like they wanted the same thing and didn't like other than like I remember the tax collector general because he was a tax collector. Like for all the other advisors, I really can't pick out like a unique trait about them.
That's true. Like I'm trying to think of Kuni's like retinue, and the only person I can think of is his childhood friend who's like a mobster, right? Rinkoda, I think.
Rinkoda and Kogo Yelu.
Yeah, that was his guard captain, or
that was the guy who came up with all the strategies and like was able to like.
He was the prime minister.
Yeah,
right?
he was like the prime minister. I mean, important role, and you know, he was able to like do all these like great things for his government, and he was like truly capable. And I really like capable characters because it makes me like so satisfied whenever someone is actually good at their job.
Yeah.
But aside from him being like very smart and being very good at his job, I can't tell you like any personal trait about him that like stands out.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
but that's fine. Like
Yeah. So what did you think about the shift at the middle, right? So the first part of the book is about the rebellion against the Zana Empire. And the second half is about pretty much like a civil war within the civil war. And the civil war, not only like because like the gods within the story, like they play the role as the Greek chorus, but also they do things to push the story along. They're not passive characters. They actively like guide the characters. and they pick sides. And in the first part of the book, they're all behind the rebellion, except for
Kiji, the god of Zana.
Yeah. And then in the second part, they like all pick sides.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is kind of like what happens with the Seven Kingdoms. Like before the war is over, like you have like other kingdoms like Kokuru and I can't remember you have all the other kingdoms like fighting for a territory. It's like they're like, oh, before the Zana Empire, we had this land, but then we lost it, and it's rightfully ours. And they're like squabbling amongst themselves even before victory has been obtained.
Even during the rebellion, right? Like both Kunigaro and Mata Sindu were leaders of this rebellion army, but they were also still serving the king of one of the kingdoms.
King Sufi.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's just geopolitics, you know? Like it doesn't matter like which country, like East Asia or like the Americas, there's always geopolitics.
Right.
There's always like even before the actual war is won, you're trying to get as much territory, as much resources as possible, because you know that once the war comes to an end, that's when the real fight happens.
Yeah. And like the second half of the book starts putting everything in stark contrast between the general like philosophies behind how Kuni governs and how Mata governs, right?
Yeah. I think it's also just like how Mata tries to rule with an iron fist, tries to like his way of solving problems is just sending soldiers and like killing people, or having these like very harsh punishments to family members and unjustly moving people from their positions depending on their birth, and
which is kind of how the Zana Empire kind of did things in a more like bureaucratic way.
Yeah, but it also wasn't good.
And, Kuni gets banished to this little island.
Dasu.
And when he gets banished, that's when he's separated from his family, right? His wife.
Gia and his children are being held hostage by Mata. And Kuni is sent to the distant island of Dasu. Yeah. He is called the King of Dasu, but there's really like nothing there when he gets there. And I think the real difference when it comes to like governing skills is that before like the rebellion became big, Kuni was the Duke of Zuri.
Right.
And he has some governing experience, even though it was like a small city. And then with Dasu, even though he's, the king of an entire island, it's still small enough that he can like get some practice, I would say. Whereas like with Mata, like he only has experience with war and like, people are not soldiers. They don't like people, like you can't just rule people based on like, it's like, oh, you're a soldier, you're gonna like have to obey me, like so I feel like with like Mata, he doesn't really have the temperament or the experience of like politics,
or even the open-mindedness of seeing people's worth, right? He is very prejudiced with everybody. Like he thinks, like he believes everyone has his own place, whereas with Kuni and his like rising status, like he starts to bring in women and
anybody who has talent.
Yeah.
Like he brings all these engineers, and I thought it was really, really funny how they're like, we're gonna spread the importance of Dasu through like this culinary program.
Right.
I was just like, what? Like,
yeah.
It actually reminded me of Korea in a way, because
Spreading of K-pop.
no, it's not K-pop. I mean, it's culture,
Right.
because it's like we aren't like, it's like we're small. We don't have that many natural resources, and at the time we were like a third world country.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how do you make money until like your economy catches up, so you can build high technology stuff? You sell culture. And that's exactly what he did. He's like, wait, like the Zana Empire, like one good thing is that it mixed all these cultures and exposed the common people to
Other things.
other parts of the world. And, you know, back before the Zana Empire, like in order to get exposure to other provinces and other cultures, you had to be rich enough to travel. and that's kind of where like Kunigaru gets his idea from.
Yeah, and that mindset is seated from the first chapter as well, right? The first chapter is about him skipping class to attend the parade of the emperor and going around the market and kind of seeing the different like goods and services, like the different goods that have come to Zudi from all over the empire. He was always in awe of that. I felt like he appreciated that. I mean, a lot of the war between Kuni and Mata is just a series of Mata underestimating Kuni.
Speaking of underestimating, I don't remember his name, but he is the scholar king that that gets appointed because he of his high like Confucius ideals. And pretty much like this is when we're going to talk more about the female characters later, but Jin Matozi, who is the female marshal, I guess. Female marshal of
Kuni's army.
Of Kuni's army. Like, even when her army is like ready to attack, that king of that province, the province is like, it's like, no, like we're good. We just like, she's a woman. Like we just have to like hold our ground because like it's dishonorable or what. I forgot his reasons for like not attacking and ignoring his advisors.
He's like as like by the book, like follower of this like Confucian like analog of Confucius moralist teachings, right? Where he believes like everyone having a place in the world, but that being rigid.
Yeah.
Right?
Also, he was following some kind of like war guidebook that's like, oh, this is deemed dishonorable if you attack in this way, or like you're not allowed to do this maneuver in like a water body. And you know, he kind of followed things by the book. And with Jin, who is like very non-traditional with her warfare strategies, she's able to win.
Yeah.
And that kind of highlights the difference between Kunigaru and Mata.
If you follow the rules, the other team knows exactly what you're going to do.
Exactly.
And yeah, that does, because like Kuni, a lot of his strategies, which came from his advisors, right, from Luan, from Jin, and from his second wife, Rasana, were all about playing on the enemy's preconceptions. Right? They think we're coming from here. We're going to go there instead.
Yeah, and like one of Kunigaru's like strategy that worked really well was getting this bandit to just rob the Zana armies like provisions and like take their horses and food, and leave the Zana army with like no backup, like no resources from like their main army. And then he does it again with Mata's army, and Mata's like, this is dishonorable. Like he's doing dirty tricks. And it's like, well, so what if it's dirty tricks? He's winning.
So I think that's the dark side of the Kunigaru strategy, is that like a lot of it was kind of just like, if you like look back on like, if you extrapolate this into like years in the future, what he does could be considered dishonorable, right, to historians or to they do mention history a lot in this book of like, well, like
Emperor
Mapidere. I think
Mapidere,
yeah.
like with Emperor Mapidere, like he was considered a tyrant to Kunigaru's generation, but Kunigaru mentions to one of his advisors or someone, he says, well, who knows in like 10 generations what people are going to think of the Zana emperor, because he was able to build all these infrastructures. He was able to bring culture to other provinces and kingdoms. And like Kunigaru's like, well, the people love me now, but what will they think about my actions in like a couple generations?
And I mean, that's solidified with pretty much the final battle, right? Or a final confrontation where Luan Zia like convinces Kunigaru to like
break the treaty.
Yeah.
Which also happened in real life. Luan Zia, like after getting a hint from his magical god book, he advises Kuni to break the treaty. And Kuni's like, why? Like, we finally have peace. Mata is my brother. So there's I don't want to do that. And Luan's like, hey, if you don't end this now, it's going to come back and like more people are going to die. Are you going to preserve your personal honor and risk like hundreds of lives and essentially just like peace for the common folks? Isn't it better to nip everything in the bud and save everybody like more bloodshed? And that's why he breaks the treaty. And he eventually becomes king because of it.
Emperor Ragan, the first of the Dandelion dynasty.
Dandelion dynasty.
I mean, I don't know if that's considered character growth, but it is like, it goes against his core instinct to like want to be everyone's friend.
Yeah.
Right.
Like speaking of that, I just remembered like one other stumbling block that Kunigaru had, and that was when like he took over the city of Pan, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna like he finds like the concubine
chamber,
and he spends 10 days there, and that was when I got really excited in the book because I thought that he would take a dark turn, but that dark turn was barely a paragraph. Like he's just like he's just, you know, sleeping with the concubines there. One of them is like the god Tazu, who like creates like chaos.
The trickster god
who doesn't side with anyone. He's like, oh, most interesting thing. Again, most interesting.
I mean, even Luan Zia comes around to that. Like, isn't this? That's how he convinces Kunigaru. Isn't this the most interesting thing to do?
Yeah. But I thought there would be like more of him spiraling down, you know, but it just like he's just like, leave me alone. Like this, like I'm lonely, blah, 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 blah. And then his friend's like, hey, snap out of it, dude. And he's like, you know what? You're right. I should become a good person and a good leader again. And I kind of wanted him to become like I wanted him to, I don't know what I wanted him to do. It's just I
was rooting for him to like not become a jerk.
But he should have become, like, I feel like that struggle should have been like much longer. And the thing about this book is that time moves so quickly.
Yeah.
Like you go from one chapter and it's just like, oh, that was 2 years ago. And you're like, what?
I mean, I think that's part of what makes it epic, right?
I mean, it's necessary, but sometimes I'm just like, wait, like they invaded the city 2 weeks ago, and then like 2 pages in, you're like, oh, never mind. They're like that army is like all dead or they're retreating, and things move so quickly in this book. And I mean, it's understandable. Lots of grounds to cover. I feel like I'm constantly criticizing this book, but I did enjoy it. I just kind of wish that all of the battles were kind of like consolidated. I just feel like they were the pacing was weird.
I enjoyed the battles. I think the way that I read too, I'm like, I'm not critically reading the whole thing, you know?
I don't plan to critically read. It's just my feelings. Like I felt like I understand like the time skips, and those were like completely necessary in the scope of an epic. But there were times where I was like, okay, there's a battle. It's really interesting. And then it's like, oh no, like retreating or like nothing happens. And it just felt like there was a lot of battles, but not all of them mattered.
I mean, yeah. I mean, to me, it felt like reading like the record of like a historical record, like you were saying. So to me, reading how the battles were turning out, like seeing the strategies and the tactics kind of play or play out. To me, I didn't mind it. I think that's just the type of book.
Yeah, it's a narrative style. It's more like I said at the beginning of this episode. It is very much like a military, like sci-fi novel. Like I said, it's an epic, so I totally understand that narrative choice. And even with the time skips, like I was really glad that the chapters were really short because I was like, man, if I have to read like 30 pages of this chapter where the same battle is happening, I am not gonna be happy. But it went by quickly though.
It does remind me of there's this like giant epic Chinese period drama, like sea drama, about the romance of the Three Kingdoms, and the battles do kind of play out like that. Like the generals make a decision, the armies carry it out, but then it's a feint, and then you zoom around both sides where the generals are setting their strategies and clashing, having the tactics clash together. And I really do. I liked it.
I mean, despite like my lack of emotional attachment to Kunigaru and Matazundu, I did really like the fact that power did change them. Mm-hmm. Like with Kunigaru, I mean, he did like retain a lot of his like commoner like ideals of everybody should, be able to have a chance at moving up in the world. But like, with him having power, he has to make some really cruel decisions. Yeah. And whereas like with Mata, like power kind of blinds him to a lot of open paths, I guess. Like
he doesn't his outlook never changes.
Yeah.
Right. He's the same person, but I think that's also like that was also his downfall, right?
Yeah. Like I mean, like power gave him like power as a king gave him like greater consequences.
Yeah.
It's just like, like this isn't the army. There's a lot more politics involved, and there are commoners, and there are like more moving pieces. And if you don't keep on top of it, then the people will turn on you and all that stuff. But
I mean, speaking of characters, I guess we should move on to the part of the book that I think a lot of people have criticized it for, which is the lack of female characters of like real substance.
Yeah. I remember on the Goodreads forum, that was like one of the things I said. It's like, I am 200 pages in. Gia seems like a cool character, but man, I really hope that there are some women politicians and warriors or just some like more substantial women characters.
Yeah. And I mean, overall, there are maybe 4 or 5 characters of any importance, right? There's Gia, Kuni's wife. There's Soto, the nanny that turns out to be Mata's aunt. There's Risana, who is the Kuni's second wife.
Jin Matozi,
who's Kuni's general, and Lady Mira, who is
Mata's
like
concubine. I don't know.
His Guinevere.
That was another thing. I was just like, what are you? I don't understand this relationship between you two. But
and there's and Kikomi, Princess Kikomi, who got like her own little part.
So the thing is, Gia is like the only main female character, like maybe 40% way through the book, and it's like really frustrating because when you're introduced to her, like she seems really smarter than Kunigaru, and she seems to be more capable in navigating the political scene because she's the one who actually gets Kunigaru into politics. Yeah, she's the one who says, "Hey, you're like a."
She's like your stereotypical like first wife, right?
Yeah. Well, she's like, well, you have to like hang out with like other politicians and like kind of ingrain yourself in there. You can't just hang out with like your underground seedy folks. I mean,
Yeah.
it's good to keep ties, but like you need to like branch out. And she's the one who kind of plants the idea in Kunigaru's head that like he is the dandelion. Like he has like some great destiny. Like he has the ability to work his way up and do great things. And yeah, it's just sad because that character just gets pregnant and she's like a mom and she's staying like in under like house arrest.
Yeah.
And like she does express her frustration with that. Like there is a chapter where she's like, I thought I was supposed to do interesting things with Kunigaru, but now I'm just like trapped in this role of mother and wife.
Does she start the relationship with her like butler in this book or
in this book?
Okay, yeah,
Otho.
Yeah.
So it was really frustrating for me because I was like, she seems like a good character. Good character. I don't think she's a good person, but like I think she's a good character, and I wish that she had more agency in this book. But I understand that. See, the thing is, this book is taking place in a world where it's patriarchal. It's traditional. It follows like the Confucius society of like the man in the family is considered the head of the family, and like the wife is supposed to be obedient to the husband's wishes and all that. And I understand that like Ken Liu, he made women like kind of invisible for like the first 75% of the book. So like when you get to the last quarter of the book where all these women are entering the military and like having more roles, it's like you have this effect of like it's jarring, like, oh, there's change there's like it becomes more dynamic. And I understand his narrative choice, but my god, like like he uses omniscient POV, and I was like, why not have a woman
POV.
Right? I mean, like let's get to Princess Kikomi because like I was so mad. Like I was so mad that Princess Kikomi was just killed off. Like I was like, okay, cool. You have a beautiful princess who is smart, who wants to do something more, and then she just dies in like the next chapter. I thought at least that plot line would go for at least like maybe like 4 or 5 chapters.
I mean, it was short-lived, but I thought that was a powerful section that makes use of that omniscient POV, right? Because the reader knows what's going on. The reader can see the machinations between the accountant general and Matza and his uncle, and also Kikomi's, own personal, like, how do I get out of this?
Yeah.
Right? Or how do my people get out of this? And it does suck that she kind of gets fridged in this section.
Yeah, she gets fridged so quickly.
Yeah.
And like the thing is, she's set up as this tragic character, right? Like this character who deserves pity. But I honestly felt zero pity for her when I was reading her scenes because, like, I don't know, she just felt like she had no reaction. Like everything that I needed to know was relayed through like the omniscient POV being like, oh, like she's smart, but she had to learn the womanly arts instead. And I'm like, okay, I get that, but like, what is her reaction to it? Where's like her,
right?
Like, I need a scene where she kind of shows more personality, but I didn't get it, and it was really like it was kind of like much of a letdown. Like,
so I think like. Because I've read the second book, and Ken does, like, Kikomi comes up again in the second book, and she actually comes up quite a few times in the second book as, like, source material for other characters' motivations or references. And I think, I think you're right. Like, the second book takes place after Kunigaru ascends, right?
Yeah.
And when he ascends, he creates the world that he built while he was fighting the Civil War, which is a world where theoretically people with merit and talent get to do what they're meant to do. That being the new setting for the second book, does result in more
female
characters.
Yeah.
There's still patriarchy. There's still like old world like preconceptions, but there are more females that are more empowered, I guess, in the second book.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of figured because I was like, okay, this is a trilogy, and clearly Ken Liu is not disrespectful of women. In fact, like through Kunigaru, you see women as like untapped potential, you know? And it's like...
And Jin pretty much like whips that like sexist king's butt.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, I know like this is a long game. I know that I have to wait until like the women characters come into prominence. But it's like with Jin Matozi, like I wish she came earlier. Like I wish she was there within like the first maybe like quarter of the book, but you don't know her gender. Like you just see her
like a Mulan thing.
Yeah, like but like you don't know like you don't know her gender, and you just kind of like learn more about the character and like have her draft more of the battle plans, and then like maybe halfway through the book you find out her gender, and it kind of like brings...
I can see how that would have made a better, like that would have worked out. Also better in terms of representation in the story. Yeah.
But also like I have issues with Jin Matozi as well. Like the fact that she is considered the exceptional female because she is able to keep up with the boys in the army, and she's able to fight. And I was kind of like I kind of did like a when I was reading this one part in the book where Jin's army is losing, and like one of the soldiers says, hey, like you need to use the women like auxiliary force. And she's like, oh yeah, like I guess we can use them to fight against the enemies. And I'm like, you're a woman. Like how do you forget that you have women soldiers in your army?
Maybe that's emblematic of like, you know, like minorities who make it, you know, get promoted, break the bamboo ceiling, but don't use your position of power to lift up other marginalized people, right? Like,
I guess
there's that whole like not being an ally to your own community because you fought to get here, right? Because she's very much also very self-centered, right? She's very
she is she is very much like up for her own agenda. I just wish that once women became more prominent in the book, I wish their asset wasn't, oh, they're lighter so that they can fight on kites. I just felt like there should have been more. I
mean, that was the voice that Risana kind of brought to Kuni's like court, right?
Yeah.
Like don't forget the women, don't forget those little people who helped you get to where you are. And that's also something that carries over to the second book as well. And the second book is where all the like the little like seeds of intrigue starts playing out with like Gia doing the long game, right? Because like she even mentions when she's during those chapters where you see her in house arrest, how she's doing this not only for Kuni's sake, but for her own sake when Kuni wins.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Because she already knows that she's going to be in competition with Lady Rizana once Kuni becomes emperor. I just want to go back to Kikomi because I feel like I just haven't vented enough yet. There is a scene where one of the gods like shows up as like one of the attendants and says, hey, you're beautiful, but you can use your beauty to serve different causes, such as being like seducing an enemy and then killing them. And then Kikomi is like, no, like I'm not going to do that. But literally like literally like a paragraph later when Kindo Marana shows up, she's like, oh, I'm going to seduce him and, you know, protect my people. And then Marana finds out like she's trying to seduce him, and then he uses her. And pretty much she's doing the same thing again. She's trying to like seduce Mata and like his uncle in order to assassinate them. And like it's nice that she gets like agency at the very, very end where she's like, oh, I'm not going to let Marana like destroy my people. I'm going to destroy my reputation and go down in history as like a bad person so I can protect my people. And it's like, that's great. I just kind of wish that agency and that like realization came before you died.
Yeah. The gods meddling in human affairs was always like, because like they're also like competing against each other because the god that told her to do that wasn't her patron god, right?
No.
Right. Yeah.
The patron god of Amu, whatever her name was, Tituana.
Yeah, she's like the one that gives wisdom, right? Or
no, I don't think she's wisdom. Because wisdom is the turtle man.
Right.
This is how we're referring to the gods. Yeah, turtle man.
The turtle man and shark guy.
Shark guy. Shark boy.
Tututika is the agriculture, beauty, and fresh water.
Yeah, so
Pali is the golden part.
So Tututika is the only god who is like completely neutral, who's like everybody should get along and whatnot. And it's but that was my issue with Kikomi. I feel like she was being used the entire time, but not in a way where I thought it was like narratively pleasing to me.
I mean, I don't think it was meant to be narratively pleasing.
Well,
her whole arc is just tragic.
But also, like, it just felt empty. Like empty to me. It's like, it's like you're a tragic character, but I feel absolutely no pity for you because I feel like I don't really get a sense of who you are. I have like all these bullet points of like what you're supposed to represent, and I don't feel it. Sorry, that may have sounded like really harsh, but I lamented at the death of Kikomi because I thought she would be like an excellent second female character, and she got killed so quickly.
I mean, in a book where excellent female characters are kind of few and far between, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite chapters, though, was like the letters between Kunigaru and Gia.
Uh-huh.
Like that's one of my favorite chapters because I think maybe because Gia is like the second half of that chapter, just like them going back and forth. And just
Is this the one with also the son also writes a couple letters?
No. It's just her and Kunigaru, and they're writing secret messages, and they're saying like, "Oh, this is my scheme on my end. How are you doing on your end?" And like, I really like the.
I think in the second book.
Yeah. I really like the banter between them, and also like how both of them are like both of them are thinking political plans on each other's ends, and I think it really showed Gia's character. I feel like I got most of Gia's character through those letters because it was the first time I was hearing like a lot of her voice in like one chapter.
I really wish we can talk about this after reading the second book because her character, I don't know if she takes a turn, but her character gets turned to 11 in the second book when she becomes Empress because she becomes that political like.
Well, she has
operator.
power at that point. She has agency. She's not just like a mom and a wife who's like afraid for her life. She actually has power to protect herself and to also further her agendas.
Yeah.
And her historical counterpart, Empress Lu Ji, I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. I'm not Chinese. Again, that empress was pretty cutthroat and did a lot of terrible things. So I'm guessing that her story will get more interesting.
Yeah.
So
lots more interesting. The second book has dragons. I'm just put that out there.
I mean,
it gets a little. It gets crazy.
How can you not? Also, I just want to mention like the Krubins in this book. They're narwhals.
Yes. The horned whales.
Yeah, the unicorn whales. I don't know why that made me so happy, but I was just like,
yeah, they created robot versions.
I was like, yeah, like unicorn whale submarines, like.
Yeah, I guess. Any final thoughts about the book?
About the book, it's definitely a long game. You have to have a lot of patience, and if you get frustrated with the female characters and the absence of them, you just have to remember that this is a trilogy.
You're not alone. And I think it's Kuni, like part of it is Kuni building the world that we want to see, as opposed to the, fascist world of Mata Sindhu. But it is a valid criticism. Like there probably could have been more. Especially within the rebellion years of the story, which I agree. I mean, for me, I remember again, I read this book over a year ago, but I remember reading it within like 2 or 3 days. Like I finished it quickly. So like it was definitely my jam and definitely something that like, I mean, the way it was written, it does move at a brisk pace.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that Ken Liu is a short story writer because like the chapters are like, again, very short and because there are like these pockets of stories with minor characters, like, like he's a short story writer. I just kind of wish that there was more perspective of the women, considering that there were so many male minor characters who just died pretty quickly. And I'm like, they got to have half of a chapter. Like, how come there aren't any women minor characters who got that?
I think he does a better job in the second book.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like I said, it's a trilogy. It's a long game.
Yeah.
If you are concerned that you won't remember people's names, or if you don't remember where, like which kingdom is where, don't worry, you're not alone. I had to flip through the map like
there's a guide
constantly
from the book
with pronunciation. I listened to the audiobook and
that helps.
I mean, it helped, but because there were so many characters, I had to like stop listening to the audiobook and start over. I was 5 hours into the audiobook and I was like, I don't know who's who anymore. So I had to like restart.
Needless to say, it's an epic story, and we use epic in every use of the term.
I do think that it deserves a lot of the praise and the awards that it received, but I also think that depending on what kind of reader you are, I feel like this is a love or hate book.
Oh.
I'm not. Strangely enough, I'm not in either camp.
I feel like you're in between, though.
I'm
so
really
it's
in
not
between.
a love or hate book, because love, hate are in between.
No, I feel like I am like in the 1% minority of like, it was a good book. Is it my jam? I'm not so sure. So yeah, I think there are two camps of readers for this book, and either way, I think you should read it and figure out which camp you're going to be in.
Definitely check it out. It didn't win a bunch of awards for no reason. And that'll do it for our discussion of The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. Rhea, what are we reading for the month of March?
I'm going to pull that information out right now. So our March book club pick is Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram. Awesome.
And as always, if you enjoyed our conversation, have your own thoughts to add about The Grace of Kings, please sound off on our Goodreads forum. Go to goodreads.com and search Books and Boba. Join our group and let us know what you think about the book or about our talking points. We always love to hear from you all.
Sorry, I'm just going to mention, if I got any historical facts incorrect, like, I am so sorry. My research wasn't like I didn't do it for a week. Like I dedicated maybe 2 days to it. So I'm sorry if I got anything wrong.
I think it's fine. If you do have any corrections, please let us know, and please let our community know. As always, don't forget to follow us by subscribing to the podcast on Google, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you find your podcasts. Check out our website, booksandboba.com. Again, don't forget to join our Goodreads group. And
that will do it for a podcast.
Yeah. Thanks to Visual Communications for letting us record in their offices in the Potluck Podcast Studios. This podcast is a part of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of Asian American hosted podcasts. Check out more of our fellow shows by going to the website podcastpotluck.com. And on that note, Rira,
right?
We'll see you later.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Phil Yu, and you may know me from a blog called Angry Asian Man.
And I'm Jeff Yang, author, journalist, and celebrity dad.
We host a podcast called They Call Us Bruce, an unfiltered conversation about what's happening in Asian America.
Each week or so, we host a discussion about some of the most vital and interesting topics in our pop culture and our community, bringing in guests who are shaping and informing this thing called Asian America from Hollywood to D.C. and beyond.
We got media, entertainment, food, family, politics, representation.
The good, the bad, the WTF of it all.
So check us out wherever you get your podcasts or at theycallsbruce.com.
Peace.
Peace.